People keep asking me this one question about my nomadic life. Is it cheaper? And my answer might surprise you because I actually think it's the wrong question. But I'm going to answer the question anyway and then talk about why I think it's the wrong question to ask. And there's also expenses involved that you don't necessarily think about or plan for. And so that's one that I'm going to talk about in today's video as well. My name is Amy Palmer. I am your Gen X big sister, and I talk about all things pre-retirement. Pre-retirement is the last 10 to 15 years-ish before you retire, before you're financially ready, before you're mentally or emotionally ready. But the thing that you do know is that you can't keep living your life the way you have been for the last few decades, whatever that means. And we're all here trying to figure out, what does this season look like? How can it bring me joy while preparing for the future? So one of the things that I've done in my pre-retirement is I decided to live a nomadic life. This decision was made during my 3-month sabbatical that I took 4 years ago. I never intentionally said I would be nomadic for X number of years. It was just, I'm going to remain nomadic for as long as it feels right and feels good. And so that's exactly what I've done. And I have been keeping an eye on expenses and what it means. I think the nomadic aspect of my life has given me the most freedom from, as compared to any other decision that I've made about how I'm designing this particular life, but only because it has freed me up from committed fixed expenses on a monthly basis for housing. So think about what it takes to fund your housing situation, unless you have a situation where your house is fully paid off, which is phenomenal and ideal. You either have a mortgage or you have rent. And then on top of that, you either have, property taxes or and home insurance, renter's insurance. Then there's utilities. Then there's repairs and maintenance and upkeep and cleaning services. If you opt to do that, there's internet service, cable, whatever you use. Think about what that all adds up to on a monthly basis. And when I was living in California, when I was living in my dream location, that number was relatively high, even though I was quite like very, very frugal. I chose a rental place that was well within my means, and I was very careful. And even so, just like bare bones living expenses was at least 3,000 a month with everything in, possibly more, but like, let's just say roughly 3,000 a month, which by some people's standards would not be considered very much, and by other people's standards would be considered a lot. The reason why I wanted to free myself up from that is I didn't want $3,000 a month coming off the top, off of whatever revenue I was able to generate, now that I was shifting into a more entrepreneurial, creative, freelance lifestyle. Just the pressure of having to meet that minimum threshold, and to get to the point where you're trying to make 3-4 times that plus a month. I didn't want to put that kind of pressure on this particular endeavor that I was taking, because I was trying to figure out, how do I do this without the hustle and grind? And the answer that came to me was to first remove as many of the fixed expenses as I possibly could and figure out how to make that happen. And so I'm going to take the year of 2025 and map out exactly what I spent on housing and accommodations, just so you get a sense. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why I chose these places as well. So 2025, last year, so I just want to do it because I have a full year to talk about. January, February, March, I was in one location. In fact, it was a rollover from 2024. I was there from like November through the end of March, so about 5 full months. That was the longest that I've been in one location this entire time that I've been nomadic. My reason for deciding to do that was up until that point, I was like really trying to spend minimal, like nothing. And I was bouncing around a lot. And I spent a couple of years visiting a lot of people and being, a guest in people's guest rooms, all over the country. And I needed to pause. I needed some stillness. I needed a place to kind of feel sort of home. And I wanted to be in one place to also make momentum on my business and my mission and what I was building. And so that's what I did. So January, February, March, I was in one location. That location was Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Why did I choose Rehoboth Beach? Few different reasons. One, I had years ago, when I lived in DC, many years ago, I would visit Dewey Beach, which is the beach next to Rehoboth Beach, the beach town next to it. And I would go there with friends, and I knew a lot of people that go there. It was a very social community, a very fun party atmosphere, a great way to decompress on the weekends. So it was a fun place to go. And over the years, many of my friends, as they've been approaching their pre-retirement into their retirement years, many of them have moved there, purchased property, either like a second property or a primary property, and have sort of settled there for this phase of their life. So I know a good amount of people there. I have a social connection. That was a really strong consideration because I knew I wanted to be in a place where I could have my private time, I could have space to myself, but I would also be able to connect with other people and, be social as I chose. The other reason why I chose this location was because it is a beach town and it's actually near a lot of small towns. There's a lot of small towns. It's a possibility for a place that I would actually like in that whole area, not just Rehoboth Beach, but like Lewis Beach and even further inland to some of the more farm field towns, because that's the vibe that I've been feeling. Like I really like the small town feel. I like, walking around a main street situation. I like the local events. I like, the farmers markets and the festivals, and then I like finding the artist communities. And I found that Rehoboth Beach had a wonderful little arts community. I was able to see theater and hear music and see artwork and, all kinds of stuff. So I was able to like really explore that area and feel at home for a while, for a set amount of time. And so that particular accommodation, I had a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and I deliberately got a 2-bedroom because this is also what I try to do when I'm in a place for a significant amount of time, especially if it's an interesting place. I try to get a space with extra space so I can start to reciprocate the invitations to my loved ones, friends, family who have graciously and generously opened up their homes to me. So I, get the second bedroom so that I can invite people to come stay. And during the 5 months that I was there, I had quite a few guests. They would come for long weekends. And I really like the beach in the off season. I just really do. I like the feel. I like the weather. It was all good. So I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed this place. And most of the places where I stay, if it's for like a midterm stay, I get off of Furnished Finder, which is an app similar to Airbnb, but it caters primarily to traveling nurses. And now they've kind of discovered the digital nomad community like me. And it caters to people who are looking for longer term stays, not just like a week or a weekend or a couple days. They're looking for a month, 2 months, 3 months, and you work directly with the landlord. There are leases involved for that time period. So you have to vet a little differently than Airbnb. I usually insist on a FaceTime walkthrough of the property by the landlord, and I've never had somebody have a problem with that. They understand that we're trying to validate each other's sort of trustworthiness and etc. And so Furnished Finder is excellent, and it will save the renter money because it's less expensive for the landlord than if they do Airbnb. So there's less fees that are getting passed on. And in this particular location, January, February, March, I was paying $2,000 a month in rent, and that included everything. That included utilities, that included internet, smart TV, rent, you know, cleaning service at the end. Like it included everything. I think I might have had to put down a little deposit, but I don't remember. Um, and it included snow removal. We did end up having like a snowstorm, I think in January or February. Excellent snow removal, all included. So $2,000 all in Rehoboth Beach to be in a beautiful place and to be able to connect. So that was awesome. So then that was January, February, March. Then the month of April, I came back to New Jersey. I stay in Short Hills, New Jersey. This is my sort of my home base. This is where I get my mail. I do end up having my mail forwarded when I'm in places for periods of time, but my primary mailing address is here in Short Hills. This is where I'm registered to vote. This is where my car's registered. This is where my health insurance is. And this is where I come back to in between stays and in between trips. And it's my brother's home, my brother and his wife, his family, my sister-in-law, my nephews. So in the month of April, I came back here to New Jersey for a little bit, but then I flew to Vegas for I don't know, 4 or 5 days. I can't remember like how long it was to go to my other brother's wedding. So April, I purposely freed up because I needed to go to that wedding. So my decision was around an event. And so I had hotel costs, and I'll give you a total cost for everything at the end of this. But generally speaking, no real housing costs in the month of April. And that was deliberate. And then the month of May was split. So I flew back from Vegas. I flew with my parents back to their winter home in Myrtle Beach because I was then going to drive them home when they're stay because they go to Myrtle Beach for the winters and then we take turns driving them. So the month of May, no housing costs. I was in Myrtle Beach for the first part, taking care of my parents, taking them back. And then I flew to La Jolla for the second part of May, La Jolla, California, and stayed with my very good friend, who has a beautiful home, and was able to visit friends in, I definitely went to Orange County and visited friends there. So I did my California thing for a couple weeks, but no housing costs that month. And no, like I wasn't paying utilities and all the things. So no costs for that month of May. Then I splurged a little bit for June, July. And this decision, and I knew in the month of June, I wanted to be somehow accessible to my close long-term BFF friend who lives in Brewster, New York, because her son, Luke, was graduating and they were having a big celebration and I wanted to attend. And I decided to extend my experience by trying to be somewhere nearby so that I could spend some time with Andrea. I hadn't lived in close proximity to her for many, many years. Actually, since we were roommates in New York City back in the very early 90s. So it's been a really long time since I've lived close to her. And she is definitely one of my closest friends. So this was a big decision for choosing that area for June, July. And I wanted to stay in one place for a decent amount of time, like 6+ weeks. And I was looking in Beacon, New York. I was looking in the Hudson Valley area because I wasn't very familiar. I had visited briefly because I'd gone to the museum in Beacon, which was awesome. And then I ended up finding right across the river in Newburgh, New York, it's got good parts and bad parts to that town. It's sort of like being, you know, it's being rebuilt for sure. But I found a place that was like right on the river with these amazing views. And I really wanted a place that was going to inspire me and motivate me because I was in a creative mode at this point in my business. I was creating a lot of new things, experimenting with a lot of new things, experimenting with creativity. And so I needed a place that would inspire me. And this place, just the view of the river, the view of Beacon and the Newburgh Bridge, and I fell in love with this area. I loved being close to Andrea. Now I was 30 minutes away, but still we were able to see each other on a regular basis. I made it into New York City a couple of times. I ended up staying there for 6 weeks, and I couldn't really afford to stay there any more than that because this was like a higher cost. So I did half the month in June for 1,500 and then an entire month of July for 2,900. That was off of Furnish Finder as well. Then in the month of August, and actually I think I stayed in Newburgh until like the 4th or 5th of August. So it kind of went into August a little bit. But then I went back to Syracuse. Uh, Syracuse is where I'm from originally. It's where my parents live during the good months. They live there from May, and then they leave in like January. So they go to Myrtle Beach from January to May. And so I went to Syracuse because we were having a big celebration for my parents' 60th wedding anniversary. So I wanted to be there for that to help because we were organizing it for them. And also gave me a chance to like recoup some of the money that I had spent in the last couple of months with the previous accommodation. And so for the month of August, I did not have housing costs. I was with mom and dad, and we got into a swing. There's pros and cons to staying with family for extended periods of time. I think we do pretty good at figuring it out, but it does need to be like a specific amount of time. And during that time, I do need to have a lot of my alone time too. So I fit that into my routine. But it was, again, nice to not have housing expenses. And then the month of September was a blessing. September into early October, a blessing because my good friend who lives in La Jolla was going away on an extended road trip and was looking for a house sitter. She had mentioned it when I visited her in May. She trusted me with her home, and she's just a very generous friend. Like she just you know gives and just doesn't mind supporting what I'm trying to do in any way that she can, which is just amazing. And so she asked me to house sit for her. So I was able to stay in her home for the month of September into early October. So again, that was a month of no housing costs. And so it went into October. Then from La Jolla, I went back to New Jersey for a couple of weeks because I was preparing for my international trip. I'm really trying to have one international stay a year. So that's my goal, that's my hope. And this one was Thailand. I was going to be in Thailand for several weeks, almost a month, starting at the very end of October and through the month of November. And I did end up splurging on some of the accommodations in Thailand. Now, mind you, you can get decent accommodations, very budget friendly, very budget friendly. I didn't do that because I had two events. The reason why I picked Thailand, and I did Chiang Mai, Thailand, and Bangkok, Thailand, as I was going to two different events, being led by the same coach. And I knew that during the events, I was going to have great accommodations being provided by her and the program that I was a part of. And in between the events and on my own time, I splurged on hotels to stay in just some nice, luxurious places, used some perks and benefits from some programs that I belong to. But I did probably spend around 3,000 in hotels throughout the month of November. And then in December, I knew I wanted to keep my costs down in December. I knew I wanted to be with my parents for Christmas, and I knew that I was going to be with them for an extended period after that because I was going to drive them back to Myrtle Beach the following year. And so I needed a little like getaway prior to Christmas. So I went like 3 weeks and found a cute little place, once again on Furnished Finder for $1,100, where I stayed there for like 3 weeks. And it was in Rehoboth Beach, back in Rehoboth Beach. So I was able to participate in the holiday events that I enjoy there and see a lot of the friends, most of the friends that I love that live there and near there. And so that was sort of like my own getaway before my family time during the holidays. And it enabled me to go spend time with them. So that is that is how I mapped out my housing for the entire year of 2025. When I go through and look through my books, all housing, all hotels, all accommodations for the entire year came out to a little over $1,400 a month, like 1450, something like that, which is less than half, at least less than half of what I had been spending when I was living in California. So it's a significant savings for me that way. But what I'm buying with this nomadic lifestyle, it's not about the cheap and the save money, but it's about the freedom and releasing the pressure and the stress. I am very blessed and fortunate that I have family and loved ones that I can lean on in between my paid seasons where I'm paying for housing. I do try to keep them minimal and not overstay my welcome whenever I possibly can. And yeah, so that's a blessing. This lifestyle is not for everyone, and everybody does this lifestyle a little differently. So, you know, if you're on here looking at other nomads, you'll see that we all kind of approach it differently. So I thought might be helpful for somebody who's considering different ways of doing this. If hearing me talk about this, if you want to have a conversation about what your pre-retirement life can look like, stick around here, hit subscribe, share this with your friends. Visit my resources. I'll link to them in my bio where I share a lot more information about how to create a life that brings you joy now and not waiting till later. My name is Amy Palmer. I am your Gen X big sister, and I am signing out.